Good morning. We do have a couple of announcements to be given first. My name is George Cotlin. I've been a member of this congregation for about 12 years. And we have a couple of announcements to be made first. Let's have Tony Fisher give the first one.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Greater Naples. I'm here up front this morning with sad news. Ruth Lawson passed away the night before last. Ruth was 102 and was a long time and much dedicated and much loved member of this congregation. So we'll remember Ruth this morning by lighting a candle. George, if you would. Just light these small candles so that Ruth can be with us this morning in spirit during the whole service. I've been in touch with Ruth's two sons, Steve and Tom, and their daughter Connie. There will be a memorial service here. The date has yet to be determined. So we'll look forward to hearing about that and more about Ruth's life as we go into the year. So we'll just take a moment of silence this morning for Ruth. And then we can begin our service with Jim and George. A moment of silence. Amen.
Adrian Cady offered me a pair of Depends. I declined. I did give a sermon about, 2 or 3 years ago, and I vowed at that time never to do it again. But what makes it even worse now is that we have that little camera up there, and if I give Ken the okay, he's going to put it on our website. And every mistake, every word, every number is going to be available out there, and I just want to apologize for any mistakes in advance, and there probably will be some mistakes. Thank you. If we have any visitors here, would you please raise your hand and the ushers will come forth and give you a chance to introduce yourself and where you're from. Are there any visitors? One back there. I don't think it's on. Welcome. Any other visitors? Well, we welcome everyone to join us with refreshments after the service. May we now say the chalice lighting together? We light this chalice flame, symbol of our liberating faith, that its light makes visible what is hidden from our view, and the beauty that lies just under the surface of all life. We'll now do our first sermon, or first hymn, number 345, With Joy We Claim This Glowing Light. With joy we claim the glowing light, advancing thought and widening view, the larger freedom, clearer sight, which from the old unfold the new. With wider view come loftier goals, with fuller light, more good to see, with freedom through earth, through the sun, with knowledge deeper reverence be. We will now do the responsive reading, number 532, The Music of the Spheres. The music of the spheres. Its rhythms are the equal repeated seasons, the beating of the heart. The cycles of stars and corn. Rhythms of the moon and tide, one single rhythm in planets, atoms, seas. Melody, record arpeggios, the harp of the universe, unity behind apparent multiplicity. We live in difficult times. I made the mistake of listening to the news before I came here. I'm sure most of you know all the problems that are going on in this world. We need to stay positive. We need to stay together. Let us meditate on all of the problems that exist in the world today and think of how we can personally make a difference. My sermon is going to be on the wonder of numbers. So let's make the offering today a wonderful one. My readings do involve what I'm going to discuss primarily in the sermon, and that is what are numbers and what is mathematics? Is it a creation of man, or is it a revelation of what's behind nature? And my reading has two different views of this. One, that it is revealed by nature, and the other, that it is strictly a creation of man. The first is from G.H. Hardy. I believe that mathematical reality lies outside of us, that our function is to discover or to observe it, and that the theorems that we prove and that we describe grandiloquently as our creations are simply the notes of our observations. The other approach is from Edward Kastner and James Newman. Today, mathematics is unbound. It has cast off its chains. Whatever its essence, we recognize it to be as free as the mind, as prehensile as the imagination. Non-Euclidean geometry is proof that mathematics, unlike the music of the spheres, is man's own handiwork, subject only to the limitations imposed by the laws of thought. We will now sing hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is tamed, to truth is saying we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we turn round right. Let's sing a second verse. Let's repeat it. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift come down where we ought to be. And when we see ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, and by turning we come round right. To be simple and free. I tinkered with this hymn, trying to make it fit my sermon by replacing a few words. The second half would be when true complexity is gained. To sum and subtract, we shan't be ashamed. To count will be our delight, and by counting, we come out right. I even considered putting this verse on the announcement page and have us sing it as a second stanza. But I feared many would condemn me for corrupting a good hymn in order to welcome back into the UU temple all you counting money changers. Mathematics and counting. Why does it have such a negative public image? We equate numbers with money, commerce, capitalism, profit, the bottom line. They're cold, they're impersonal, they're absolute. And mathematics is hard. Many of us hated it in high school and avoided it in college. Math majors were all geeks. And at best, math was a necessary evil to be survived as painlessly as possible. But I'm a geek. Even my letter in wrestling didn't give me cover enough. I loved algebra in high school and spent the next 4 or 5 years getting a bachelor's degree in mathematics. My last deep contact with higher math ended over 50 years ago because my career in computer programming dealt primarily with commercial and business uses. The highest math I used while coding in COBOL was Boolean algebra. With my poor memory, calculus, differential equations, and analytical geometry became just as alien to me by now as it is to probably most of you. However, my first UUN connection was made over 12 years ago at a Renaissance Academy class called Mathematics, the God Language, taught by one Katie Korb, who also had a bachelor's degree in mathematics. And I'm still enamored of numbers. While tossing in bed at night, I sometimes recite prime numbers as a gimmick to try to fall asleep. It seldom works. When I wake up, I do a Sudoku puzzle to wake up my brain, and that does help, even though Sudoku is all about elimination logic and has nothing to do with mathematics. Our version of the Arabic numbers, 1 to 9, are used in Sudoku puzzles simply as a set of unique symbols. You could do Sudoku with letters or even computer icons. Publishers of Sudoku choose our numbers, or at least the Western version, because they are probably the most widely recognized set of 9 symbols on the planet. 10 symbols when you add that marvelous 0. Since I've agreed to do this sermon, I've read a lot of books on science, And that led me to the history of mathematics. Two of them are A Mathematical Mystery Tour by Dewdney and Is God a Mathematician by Livio. That title is close to Katie's. They ask me the same questions. Has humankind created mathematics, or have we simply discovered it? Do numbers and mathematical structures exist outside of us and outside of nature as the grand foundation, the rules that make it all work? Or did we invent the whole concept and simply add our labels and symbols to concepts that were already manifest in the world? I was always interested in where numbers first came from. One totally isolated and primitive hunter-gatherer language was found to have a number vocabulary limited to 1, 2, 3, and many. The first human trades must have been one for one. But once people accumulated multiple surpluses, they needed some way to barter for a fair, or even better, a favorable trade. Before staging a race on a neighboring tribe, it behooved the attacker to count the relative numbers of warriors on both sides. And once humans began to settle in an agricultural life, they needed some way to keep track of the best planting and reaping times. They counted days or moons, or tracked the sun and the stars. The Mayans built their pyramids primarily to delineate the seasons. But during the early days of Greek geometry and mathematics, there was no question about the independent existence of numbers and the mathematical relationships. The cosmos was the physical world, reached through the experience of the senses. The holos was the mathematical world that existed beyond the cosmos, reached only through reason. It was the world behind Plato's shadows on the cave walls. Pythagoras led a commune of mathematician philosopher zealots in 500 BCE in Miletus, which is now in Turkey. They spent equal time on geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, and music. And Plato had a banner over the entrance to his academy that read, "Let no one destitute of geometry enter." I assume the translation from the Greek is accurate. Destitute, without means of subsistence. In this case, devoid of the primary tool of reason. If you didn't know geometry, you didn't know anything. For ancient Greeks, numbers had mythical identities. One was not really a number, it was the generator of numbers. Odd numbers were masculine and good. Even numbers were evil and female. Love and marriage were represented by 5, the union of the first male-female number 2, and the first male number 3. So the pentagon and the 5-pointed star were sacred symbols. And out of the pentagon came one ratio, 1.6180, inherent to the two different sides of the pentagon star, was defined by Euclid as the extreme and mean ratio, and was held to have special cultural and mystical value. It was used to determine the precise length and width of the Parthenon in Athens, the most famous example of what would later be called the golden rectangle. And the golden rectangle has been found throughout the years, whether it was intentional or not, in works in art and architecture. Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa has been measured with golden rectangles by countless art teachers. How could geometry and mathematics have been risen in ancient Greece to such a high esteem and achieved such results when it had almost no tools? The number system was a precursor to Roman numerals and just as useless in calculations. Can you imagine giving your age as LXXXVIII? There was no algebra, no symbols, no decimals, only numerals and fractions and geometry. Pythagoras probably did most of his research by drawing geometric forms in the dirt with a stick. But something enabled and drove him to develop and prove his theorem that the square of the hypotenuse of a right angle is equal to the sum of the squares of the two sides. To me, his authentic geometric proof, attributed to Pythagoras in Dewdney's book by a Greek math historian, so it's probably authentic, was both brilliant and beautiful. Beautiful because I can still appreciate math proofs. But numbers did find better expressions over time. The oldest record of the use of a symbol for zero was found in a temple in Cambodia, dated somewhere around the 6th century. The number system we use today, the set of Arabic numerals positioned by columns representing the powers of 10, originated somewhere in central India in the 7th century and spread over the Arab world for the next 3 or 4 centuries. Europe didn't use them widely until the 16th century. I guess we could say that Muslims dominated the Mediterranean until we Christians finally stole their numbers. Today, we can't avoid them. Our society is inundated with numbers. Look at the by the numbers block in your announcements. We total the service, the attendance of people, the amount of money collected. And we do that every week, we do it every month, we do it every year. We budget all the time. We designate numbers for time, date, temperature, height, weight, speed, and age. Our commerce is by the numbers. We record much of our news in numbers. Too often, especially lately, it's recorded in body counts. Most of our sport outcomes are determined by counts of balls entering a net or falling into a hole, counts of competitors crossing a line or touching a plate. Fantasy football is not a sport. It's a massive conglomeration of statistics. On a daily basis, we deal with some big numbers. We find it almost impossible to fit these numbers into some rational perspective. How do you grasp 1 trillion? Well, you start with something small, a second. A minute has 60, an hour has 3,600, a day has 86,400, a year over 31 million, and in 80 years, about 2.5 billion seconds. That's how long we live, 2.5 billion seconds. If we combine 400 long lives, we might reach 1 trillion seconds. If you want a more tiring way of getting to 1 trillion, you could count the steps it would take to walk around the Earth at the equator. That would be rather hard to do since about 90% of the equator is over water. But if you have a 30-inch pace, it equals about 50 million steps to walk around the Earth. In order to reach 1 trillion, you'd have to do it 20,000 times. Finally, with a vast array of land telescopes and the Hubble Space Telescope, we now estimate the number of stars in the Milky Way as somewhere between 300 and 400 billion. And that's only one of maybe up to 170 billion galaxies. If we multiply the stars and the R's by all the galaxies, we reach 7, followed by 25 zeros. That does make a lot of potential places for intelligent life elsewhere, but the odds for humanity to ever hear from them is still rather low. I doubt if our human race will live that long enough to get the call. Numbers and mathematics have helped us to enter the age of the computer and the internet. We communicate more and more through transistors, tracking everything in zeros and ones and storing all the rules and results up in the cloud. Will this become our primary reality? Well, one of my favorite quotes is that the world is not digital, it's analog. Even energy and light and sound and heat and so many forms is both a particle and a wave with a full range of frequencies and amplitudes, colors and tones and volumes. Matter still comes in atoms with electrons and neutrons and protons, even if they break down into quarks and bosons and maybe strings. Most of us still prefer live music and live sports over the broadcast or recorded ones. Some of us still choose LPs over CDs and photographic film over digital. One mathematician in my readings, Maria Canzoni, from today's Venice, added a third link between the pair of cosmos and holos, the world of memos, thought or consciousness. She doesn't limit thought to just chemical and electronic energies between the material neurons of our brains. She believes memos may be separate and equal to the other realities. Our current human brain is the result of about 4 billion years of the Earth's evolutionary experimentation on biological structure. It resulted in Homo sapiens only in the last 200,000 years, but humanity might soon take control of its own evolution. We've come a long way in understanding how life changes through the functions of DNA and RNA. Much of what we know about molecular biology has been aided by over 200 years of mathematical studies on the subject of knots, beginning with Vandermonde and Gauss. The math in knots helps us define how the helix claims change, unwind, and rewind. This is another example of purely mathematical investigations percolating as abstractions for decades or centuries, only to shed light on some new discoveries in the physical world. For thousands of years, we have searched the cosmos and the holos and the memos for a better understanding of ourselves and the world around us. At times, we follow our emotions and find true simplicity. We use music, dance, and other humanities to turn us to a better understanding of how we fit in a personal human world. At other times, we follow our intellect and find unfathomable complexity. We then use mathematics and science to count us to an expanded comprehension of how our natural world works. The third path, the memos world of human consciousness, could evolve in ways that allow us to reach even new levels of knowledge and peace, and thus satisfy that basic human passion to know, to grasp all the wonders of numbers and science and art and love. May our multiple paths never end, and may we always come round right. Amen. Our next hymn will be Knowledge, They Say, number 339.
Knowledge, they say, drives wonder from the world. They say it's still through all the dusts ablaze, with marvels at their feet. One who tends to foretell that knowledge one day shall be song. We seem like children wandering the shore, gathering pebbles colored by the wave, while the great sea of truth from sky to sky stretches before us, boundless, unexplored.
With everything going wrong in the world, we often feel that nothing makes sense, that we are lost. There was one quote that I can't find here. The quote was from G.B.S. Haldane. The world, the universe is queerer than we assume. Not only queerer than what we assume, it's queerer than what we can assume. But mathematics and numbers are a welcoming science. And even if we can't conceive these ideas, we will still calculate them.